now 7 o'clock. I call to order this meeting of the Charter Review Committee for Thursday, October 17th, 2019. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Committee Member Amosol?
Here.
Committee Member Benito?
Here.
Committee Member Cooley? Here. Committee Member Coulterman?
Here.
Committee Member Ricosa?
Here.
Committee Member Silva?
Here.
Chair Jane?
Here. Very good. We now move on to public presentations. Would any member of the public like to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of the committee meeting minutes. First, we have the minutes of this committee from September 21st, 2019. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, so you have.
Need a second.
You need a
Second.
Member Cooley has a comment on this, so.
Yeah, just recalling from the last meeting, there was some confusion about the language on this. And I note on this agenda, which is what I had thought it was, it says that we had put a motion to discuss 3 districts onto the agenda. On the next meeting, it was 3 member districts, which is a very different thing. And we were like, we might want to come back and update this. Has this already been updated, or were we just mistaken last time? Because the statement last time was that we were talking about, the reason that the agenda was wrong was because at this meeting we had stated it wrong.
You guys discussed last meeting to update it, so it's,
Okay,
it's the updated version.
Awesome, thank you.
It was corrected, I read it.
Yeah, it is correct. I was just wondering if that was done already or not. Okay.
Okay, any other comments on the meeting minutes? Okay, so we have a motion by Member Coulterman, seconded by whom?
Second.
Member Silva. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, now we move on to item 3B. These are the minutes of the September 26th meeting. Does anyone have any comments or? None. I have a comment. There were 3 presentations at the last meeting, 2 by City Clerk Hossam Hagag and 1 by Member Cooley. And I was wondering, were those supposed to be posted somewhere?
So they aren't typically posted to the committee's webpage, but they are posted on iLegislate. Now there was a glitch in the software that I was informed that it was posted on the internal, but it hadn't been exposed to the public.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, so that has been corrected. And also, in addition, just to make it easier for people to access, it will also be put on the committee's webpage as well, so that it'll all be there. I only had 1 presentation. I think it was for 2 agenda items, but in general, anything that was presented last week will go up on the website for easy access, but it should be up also right now on the iLegislate.
Okay, very good.
That issue was corrected, yep.
Thank you very much.
Could I ask the city clerk to give the full website address for the iLegislate so that members of the public could find it?
I'm not going to read it in the mic. It's a pretty long address. I think if you just go to the City of Santa Clara's webpage and then you go to council meetings, it will take you to that web portal, and then you can select based on the committee's name. So Charter Review Committee, and then you can sort there. In general, to make it simple for folks, we will link to it on the main committee webpage, so it makes it easier for folks.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
By Member Ricosa. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, now we move on to item number 4. Does any member of the public have any input, anything to say about how we're doing the districts, anything on the agenda, the number of districts? Okay, please step forward to the microphone up there, and please state if you're a resident of the city of Santa Clara.
Hi, my name is Richard Conda. I am not.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Richard Conda. I'm not a Santa Clara City resident. I am the executive director of the Asian Law Alliance. I am an attorney with that organization as well. I'm one of the lawyers who represents Ladana, Yumori Kaku, West Mukuyama, and others in a lawsuit under the California Voting Rights Act, or the CVRA. As all of you know, a Superior Court judge ruled that the city of Santa Clara was in violation of the CVRA. Judge Coonley ordered that the city be divided into 6 districts. The 6-district map was developed by your committee, and Ms. Gobele was very involved in that process as well. Judge Coonley further ordered that district elections be held in November 2018 to remedy your violation of the CVRA. As all of you do know, Raj Chahal was elected to your city council to represent District 2 in November 2018, making him the first Asian American elected to the Santa Clara City Council. It is also my understanding that you conducted or have conducted an online poll for input on a plan, and that roughly 66% of those who responded to that online survey have preferred 6 districts. So if your committee decides to recommend something other than 6 districts, it would seem to me you are disregarding that survey. I strongly suggest that this committee recommend a 6-district solution to Santa Clara's voting rights violation. A 3-district recommendation will likely result in more litigation because 3 districts with 2 members elected to each district will be considered at large and is susceptible to challenge under the CVRA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Would any other member of the public like to speak? Please step forward, state your name and whether you're a resident.
Good evening. My name is Min Stephen Dovan. I'm a voting resident of Santa Clara. The founders of this nation had a rallying cry to encourage Americans to rise up against the British crown. I'll make it fast, okay? Taxation without representation is unacceptable. In Santa Clara, we currently have taxation without fair representation. People in California have different needs than people in Tennessee. Likewise, we in the South Bay have different needs and interests than those in the East Bay. And by analogy, residents who live in one part of this city can and will have certain needs different from those living in other parts of Santa Clara City. Okay. Council members who live and raise their families in the same neighborhood, in the same community, by simple logic and understand and serve their neighbors and constituents better because they drive on the same street with potholes, use the same sidewalks with trees that need trimming, etc. These are just some examples on a micro level. We haven't even touched on the macro issues like special zoning, budgets, commercial developments, etc. I have just half a page left. Former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, said, "All politics is local." How true. The City Council must promptly adopt the order of the trial court judge and implement the 6 districts plan, which is clearly fair, appropriate, and equitable. The city should stop its appeal of the court's order because the appellate court will affirm the judge's decision. I'm an attorney. I do some appellate court work. I'm an attorney for 4 decades. So the City Council should stop wasting our hard-earned taxpayers' money. They should remember that as elected officials, they are public servants. So do your job and serve the people, City Council, not special interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak?
Steve Chesson. I do not live in Santa Clara. And I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I did want to respond to the remarks that Mr. Conda had made. He alleged that a system where you elect more than one person in separate cycles from a district, by a district rather, is in violation or would be considered an at-large system. I would recommend that you ask him for the case law or the statute that states that, because I couldn't find anything to that effect. And that's the same way that you elect from trustee areas to your school board. You have school board trustee areas that elect more than one person in alternating cycles.
Thank you. Any other member of the public? Okay. Certainly. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to make a correction about what was just said about the school board. Yes, there are trustee areas. Trustees must live in those areas, but the voting is completely at large. Everybody in the entire school district for Santa Clara Unified votes for trustees in all the districts, so it's not by district voting.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification. All right, now we move on to item number 5 on our agenda. City Clerk, will you report on how our surveys are going and so on?
So since the last meeting, and you all have the surveys, both the online ones as well as the paper collected ones. I know there was a comment about the percentages of those who were in support or not in support. Obviously, there were several paper-formed or paper-filled surveys. So I'm not entirely sure if those numbers are accurate that were mentioned earlier today. In general, you do have at your desks, and for those members of the public, there are additional copies. Just a few more responses. So other than what you have at your desk or in front of you right now, these are the only additional responses that we've received from the public since the last meeting.
Could you summarize what the results are for the public?
Question, because I didn't tally these up. So, it's on the second page here. So of those that responded, 2/3 of them selected to keep the current plan, and then the others.
Meaning the current plan is the judge's order of 6 districts?
Correct. And then of the others, you have about 60% who've elected for 3 districts, and then you have a breakdown of the others. So. Sorry, that is the cumulative online responses. That is not just the new ones.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anyone from the public like to respond to the survey results? Seeing none, let's move on to item number 6. Does any member of this committee like to report on what they've heard from their meetings with the public? Yes, Member Coulterman.
I've just had online communication with people thanking me for supporting 6 districts.
Member Cooley.
Yeah, so I didn't actually get any additional feedback on number of districts, but on the discussion of residency, there was quite a bit of I was obviously very loud at the last meeting, so I got a lot of opinions forwarded to me on that. Mostly there was a attitude, which I think was completely valid, that there is value in putting, even if the only place we really can enforce it is at registration of when someone is registering to run, there is value in having a statement in the charter saying that we want people to remain in their district over the course of their term, even if we aren't looking into finding some way to actually make sure that happens. I know there was some discussion within the committee about what is reasonable to actually request and what the school boards do, but there was a statement saying that we were kind of getting away from just the idea, should it even be in the charter, and there was a desire to look at whether or not that is the case. So I had like 3 people tell me that after that meeting, and so I wanted to voice it as I thought it was a perfectly valid point of view.
I had a couple people email me saying that they preferred 6 districts. Okay. Any other reports? Okay. Now we move on to item number 7, which is the discussion of the actual text that we would like to recommend to the City Council. Again, this is not binding. Council may change it at will. So, do we have a report from the clerk?
So you have in your packet, and for those members of the public or those watching online, it is part of the agenda. So if you're in the room and you'd like to pick it up, there is some copies in the front. If you're online, it's part of the agenda, so you can click through and receive it. There is some draft language that the city attorney and I have proposed in front of you that covers all of the items that you see in agenda item number 7. This is just a draft to, get the pulse of the committee. I certainly don't think that the committee is here to wordsmith, so we could probably be here all night if we wanted to wordsmith word for word what the new language would look like. And of course, we all know that the council may decide to modify. But I think it's very important that the committee give direction, very clear direction on what it is, since this is the last meeting, you would like to recommend to the council. And of course, the city attorney will take that information or take that input and then reword it as appropriate. And then when it is presented to council, obviously as committee members, you're all welcome to show up and see the final language. But certainly the intent is to use the language or write language that would reflect what the committee decides tonight. So I don't know if there's obviously some corrections you'd need to do to clarify the intent, then absolutely we'd love to hear that. Wordsmithing word for word the entire charter language probably is not a good use of our time.
I don't actually agree with that, because if you look on our website, what it says is Charter Review Committee to approve final charter amendment language to present to the City Council. So when you say that this is just a draft, that doesn't make any sense according to what is posted on our city's website.
You're certainly welcome to do that. So, I mean,
Is there any way to get the text of it on the screen?
we can get the text on the screen. I think everybody has a copy in front of them, but if you guys wanted to do live editing in the meeting, is that
I would
what
like
you're-
to see that, yes.
Is that for the intent of live editing live, or is just to see what you have in front of you?
I have a number of comments about the actual text that I would like to bring up, and it would be great if everyone could see it at the same time.
I have a comment. Can I make a comment? I would like to say that while I think it might be valuable to have a conversation regarding the intent of what our final recommendation is, I believe that we'll go to the City Council. The City Council then has the opportunity to accept or reject any of what we recommend, and then if they did accept it, it would still have to go to legal in order to align with the charter review, the charter review as it stands, and how we would change it. So I am in favor of listening, but I think that if we get down to commas, articles, and dashes in a rewrite, that would not be a productive use of this committee's time. Thank you.
Member Cooley.
I just want clarification here. Attachment 1 is the proposed language change. Attachment 2 is a reference to the San Jose's version of the law, and attachment 3 is a reference to state law covering something relevant, I assume?
Yes.
Redistricting. Yes. Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that is what I am reading here. Okay, thank you.
Member Ricosa.
Yes, I reviewed the proposed draft changes, and to your comment, I believe if we approve it tonight with maybe minimal wordsmithing, I also agree that we shouldn't do a lot of wordsmithing, but if we agree as a committee to accept the proposed draft, then we can consider it final, and then we'd be fulfilling the what's on the website. We'd be fulfilling our duty.
Okay, thank you. Member Cooley.
I'll just say that I have a very different impression of what, not necessarily for this meeting, because I knew this direction we were going, but for this committee, I thought that when I first got appointed, I thought the goal of this committee was we were going to come up with a more abstract recommendation, like, for example, 6 districts, and we want to have an independent commission, and basically a list of this is how we want it to look, and it was going to be, and we were not going to worry, basically, we weren't even going to worry too much about the direct language at all. Obviously, the last meeting we started talking about direct language, and I have no problem going that route, but I do think, at least from the original ask from the city council, they would be fine with a recommendation that was high level, number of districts, what needs to be covered, what should the residency be in our terms, not necessarily in legalese terms. So I think that isn't, particularly if it looks like it's too long to come up with a direct recommendation, I think that is an acceptable alternative for this committee to put out, to say, like, here is what in plain language we think it should cover, and if the city council really wants us to wordsmith, they always can ask us to meet again and wordsmith.
Okay, Member Coulterman.
Okay. I have a question about the first paragraph of section 600, city elected officers.
Can we get it on the screen?
It says that a mayor or chief of police department and city clerk must be a resident and a qualified registered elector of the city. But for council, it just says qualified elector. Why is it different? Qualified elector and qualified registered elector. If there isn't a difference, that they need to be the same.
I think we can put that in there, registered, yeah.
Okay, I just want to defend what I see here on the city's website. It says Charter Review Committee to approve final charter amendment language to present to City Council. And if that's, as the chair of this committee, that is what I'm operating on, what is here on the city's website. So it shouldn't be here on the city's website if that's not our intent. Okay.
Chair, nothing that gets submitted to the city council before they've seen it can be considered final in any sense of the word.
Okay, thank you. Any other member? Member Silva.
Yeah, I think it's fair that if any of the committee members have comments on it, to put the comments out, but let's not get too crazy on going through the whole word by word, line by line. So,
well, let me give you an example here. At our last meeting, what we said was when you get elected, if you are a member of that district, if you move, you don't have to resign. That's what we said. That is not what this says. If you look at the underlined part, it basically says you have to stay a resident. Okay, no person shall be eligible to hold elective office other than the mayor unless she is a qualified elector and a resident in the district.
So just to clarify,
Again, yes.
if I may, just to clarify, in the last meeting there was direction given, but there was no decision made about how you wanted to handle the scenarios. So rather than providing 10 drafts, we provided a draft. Even if you look down on the second page, there is a proposed transition plan. This is a draft. Until we know where we're going, what happens with the case of the appeal, what the committee desires, what the council desires, all of this is one draft. If we try to do every permutation of every option that was given to us in the last meeting, we would have probably 20 drafts looking at. So I actually agree with what Committee Member Cooley was saying. This is what one instance of this would look like. We are showing it to you for you to give us direction. If that is something that the committee, as you mentioned, that council members must remain in their district, or that they would be able to stay in it even after being elected to it for the duration of that term, give us that direction. And then that's why the city attorney would be able to then afterwards wordsmith this rather than spending the entire meeting here wordsmithing word for word. Give us a direction and we'll take that and go with it.
This is what I had wanted, because this is what Menlo Park does and this is what San Jose does. If you are in a district and you move, you have to resign. And that's what this says.
Chair, also.
Yes, Member Cooley.
Just gonna want to correct. My understanding of the last meeting was there was two things, and it was like late, so we hadn't decided. We wanted to end, but there were two things, and the options were basically we could put something really simple in that would be basically saying that you had to be a member of the district when you got elected, and that would be easily enforced, and we could add all the stuff we want there easily, and it would be like one line in the charter. Or the other plausible alternative, well, we could do essentially what we did for city council, and I don't think anyone really liked the existing one, which is a blanket statement with absolutely no anything. And the last thing that was brought up was we should look at San Jose's language, because San Jose has a 3-page extensive breakdown of what they can do. and we said, well, we'd like to see some language and take it back, which I think we had the San Jose language here.
Yes, we did.
So, and I think everyone knows what the one-line language would be, so I think we could have that conversation, but there wasn't a decision made, just to be very clear. We did not vote on that.
Okay, very good. I'm surprised that the clerk's office decided to pick one out of those two. And we would have basically, had we not been reviewing this, we would have accepted what San Jose and Menlo Park is doing.
So the record is clear. The clerk's office did not pick anything. The clerk's office presented two alternatives. We're not picking anything.
Okay.
We're responding to your request to come up with some draft charter language, and we provided San Jose's alternative language, and you can decide what you want to recommend to the council.
Okay. Member Ricosa.
Yes, the clerk dutifully submitted the San Jose language, and it says, in a sense, in effect, you get to stay, finish your term, even though you may have been redistricted out of it. So, and if we can discuss that and say, find that acceptable, and we can direct city staff to incorporate that language into our charter.
I believe that actually AB 849, which was adopted by the state of California on October 8th, says that if you get redistricted, you stay a member. That's state law.
And that is in there as an attachment for you to reference, and if you like that, then we go with it. So that's why you have all of those as attachments for you to discuss and recommend what you would, as a committee, come to an agreement on what it is you want.
Okay, thank you. Member Bonita.
Are we going to make a difference whether you move within the city or out of the city? So if you move into another district versus out of the area?
Moving is a whole other question. Okay, we did not get clear direction on moving. I mean, if you want to, you have that's something you can decide to do. If you want to make something, make a specific recommendation about people who, for no other reason than that they choose to move out of the district, then we can put that into the charter too. But I don't recall getting specific direction from the committee as a whole about the issue of moving. The language we have here covers when you're eligible to be elected from the district, you have to live in the district, and we've given you sample language both in the form of the San Jose Charter as well as the new state legislation, which talks about you get to finish your term even if you're redistricted out. Now remember, redistricting only occurs once every 10 years, so it's not going to be some common thing that happens. Moving is a different question. It's if you want to recommend moving does not make you ineligible to continue to serve in that district, that's a recommendation. So but you have to consider, how that would affect the ability of the charter amendment to pass. I mean, these are all things that people consider and people have different opinions about. But we'll pass on whatever recommendation you make, whatever the committee votes to have as the principles for how to be elected by district. We will pass on that recommendation, and we'll come up with language that follows that recommendation, and the council will consider it and decide whether that's the proper language to be on the ballot.
Coulterman.
I recall at the last meeting hearing from a member of the public who said we need to keep have language that prevents people from purposefully moving out of their district and keeping their seat in order to prevent people from gaming the system, essentially moving into a district to run and then moving out of the district. But I like the state language, which allows someone, if they happen to be reboundary, they finish their term. If they want to run again, they can run in the new district.
Thank you. Any other member Cooley?
So I think the agenda item we have now is just general talk. So my understanding of where we are right now, and I just wanted to do high level, we're looking at 3-2 with alternating elections. That was where we kind of got to last meeting. The residency question, which was open, everyone I think pretty much understood that you want some kind of residency requirement. The realistic options were never going to block involuntary loss of districts. So really it's going to be either you must be a resident to be elected, or you must retain a residence the whole time, and probably something in there talking about whether or not you lose it optionally. It sounds like their language is pretty well defined, so not a problem. And then the only other thing I think that we had unresolved was how redistricting works. And I think that's a high-level recommendation as far as I can tell. I don't think there's any other points. And if there is, if someone could please remind me so I can make sure I have it on my list of things that we want in our final recommendation.
So redistricting is now covered by this new state law. It determines how many public meetings you have to have, who the members are. It is decided by the city council, but that's all in the state law. Yes, Member Cooley.
Yeah, nothing. The state law is we have a charter. We can put what we want in the charter.
It covers charter cities in there. There's 3 sections, one for counties, one for general law cities, and it's item number 6120. What is it called? 21620 covers charter cities.
Yeah. Well, my point is that anything which is, like, we are welcome to say something which would go for city council and have different rules in our charter, right? The things which are delegated to the city, we can define the rules on which everything happens. That is what the charter does. So I don't think it's something we just want to punt on entirely. Regardless, I was just trying to kind of list the things that we would talk about. The other thing was actually transition, which I think there was things. So I think our final recommendation should cover at least those 4 things. On residency, I think the language that I'm actually fine with both versions of the language. I think what is there is fine, saying you have to be a resident, and the only thing I might say is you do have kind of the complexity of, I don't know if you want to bring into the fact, like, what if someone loses their house because they lost their landlord, kicked them out? What does that mean? Is that voluntary? That gets messy. So, but besides that, I think that the residency language, I'm actually fine with most of it. So, I'd rather focus on the other stuff, honestly.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, if you move on to the first part of the second paragraph there, the elective officers of the city shall consist of the city council, composed of 7 members, and the chief of police. That line doesn't say clerk. And now clerk is covered later, but it just seems kind of odd that that doesn't talk about the clerk when it talks about the chief of police. And then
It should.
And then if you go down to the very end, the last paragraph, it says, no person shall be a candidate for both mayor and the city council seat at the same election. So historically, we've had this concept of seats, and this may be confusing to the public, and I would just say maybe city council position instead of seat, just to avoid confusion from our history, but I'm fine with leaving it the way it is. And it says seat later at the very end, the last line. So those are the only comments I have on this section, but I just wanted to clarify that what we're saying is that if you are a council member in a district and you move, you have to resign. That's what this language says. Okay, very good. So do we have a motion to adopt this then?
I have another question.
Okay.
If you go back to the second paragraph, you were showing the term at large was struck out. But that's confusing because the chief of police and city clerk are still elected at large.
But it also includes in the beginning of this the sentence the members of the city council.
The mayor is also at large.
Right.
Okay, I'll have to double check the rest of the provisions of the charter, but we should add a sentence saying that the mayor and the police chief and the city clerk will be elected at large.
I think we know what we need to mean. It's just not working.
Okay, does anyone ever, I guess we're not going to vote on this, according to what I'm hearing. Well, we have some corrections that we've suggested. I guess, well, do we have a motion? Oh, Member Colterman.
So can't we vote on it with the suggestions, assuming we've included those suggestions that we've made?
Yeah, I mean, what you've been able to do, and I think it's great that we've had so many eyes on this. It's always it's drafting anything is very difficult. Drafting a charter, drafting an ordinance. That's why we published it and got it to you. I'm glad you read this, because it's not easy for one or two people to do this. So I think what we caught here were some very obvious things that should be corrected in the charter, in the language that's here. But in terms of the recommendation, I think we understand that this language needs to be corrected so that we don't make any mistakes when we put it on the ballot. So I think you can definitely make a motion that you recommend that the charter be amended according to this language, but not necessarily that this is the exact language. With their comments correcting certain, errors or the corrections that are needed to get your sentiment that we all understand this. If there are other things you'd like to recommend, you don't have to give us the exact words, because if we try to come up with the exact words here at this meeting, I guarantee you we'll make some mistakes and we'll have to correct them again. But if you tell us, exactly what you want to recommend to the council, the words will eventually get done according to your recommendation. And then the council will have to consider it and decide if is that the exact measure they want to put on the ballot, or are there some changes that they want to make.
I don't know if this is the right place to put it, but the San Jose language says that someone needs to be a citizen of the United States for 1 year and a resident of that district for 30 days. And I don't know where that would go.
Well, if you want those concepts to be put in, then the committee would have to tell us that that's what they want to do, and then we could figure out how that would work. I'm not so sure about the 1 year. That language from the San Jose Charter might be kind of old. I know that, for example, when people go to naturalization services, when they're sworn in, they register them to vote right away. And so I don't think those people would expect to have to wait 1 year before they'd be eligible to maybe run for office. But it's up to you what you want to recommend. It seems like 1 year is kind of out of the ordinary to require somebody to wait before they could run for office if they are a registered voter.
Member Colterman.
I think we could do this in chunks and take this section 600 chunk, and then as we work along, if there's language we then want to add to that, we can make a motion at that time to add.
Well, I think we don't want to wordsmith go line by line. I think that's the sentiment that I'm hearing.
But concepts, we can deal with concepts. Like waiting a year, that can be up or down. 30 days in the district, we can go through concepts.
Okay, so
vote on those.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the Charter Amendment Section 600, City Elected Officers, with the corrections that we've discussed to make it clear what are the at-large offices versus the district elected offices.
Second.
And is there any recommendation? Okay, so there's a second. Are there, Member Cooley, do you have any comments?
I really don't think this is the direction we want to go with this. Should be considered the draft as reference for us. The direction we should go with this is our recommendation should end up being, we want to do A, B, C, D, and E, which we could, do what we did last week or last time with a bunch of straw polls to figure out if we want to add time limits or stuff, and then at the very end we'll basically put together a nice big motion, which will be, we want to adopt 3 districts, 2 members each, alternate each election, with this residency requirement, with this waiting period added, and that would be our end result. I think at this point, since we don't have multiple versions of this to look at and pick and choose from, to say we're going to do this is a mistake, because it's saying more than we want to say, because at this point we're not going to be wordsmithing, and I think everyone's agreed we're not going to be wordsmithing, so we shouldn't adopt the words, right? So I disagree with this motion. I think that the end result motion should be a nice motion with our list of like what we think city council should do. And we should, in order to get there, we should do basically what we did last time, which was straw polls between different options to figure out where the committee is. And at the very end, we'll do one big motion that hopefully the entire committee can get behind. So yeah, I disagree with this approach of adopting this sample section 600 that was provided.
Okay, Member Benito.
So you're saying we're just going to go ahead and put in a list of these are our recommendations. We're not going to get involved with the language other than what's in the recommendations, and we move on from there. I mean, that sounds clear to me. So I'd like to pull my my second, please.
All right, well, I agree with that. Member Ricosa.
Yeah. I agree with the original intent, as Ms. Coulterman said, that we want to vote on the concepts, not do the wordsmithing, but give our recommendation for concepts, and then after the result of that, the wordsmithing will be done by city staff based on our direction, which I think is the best we can do in a timely amount of time, that given what we have this evening. So the motion has been seconded. So after the discussion,
Has not been seconded.
yes, it has.
I removed it.
Then I second it.
Okay. So is there more discussion, Member Coulterman?
Yeah, I don't really want to wait to the end and vote on everything, because that pressures people into voting up or down, yes or no on the whole thing, instead of being able to decide that, yes, this is what I want, but I don't want this other thing, and be able to have an individual voice.
So this this language here clearly does not cover 3 districts. Nowhere in here does it say 3 districts, and it also doesn't cover well, the redistricting, I believe, is covered by state law, but there may be some finer points on redistricting that we want to add to this. And it also doesn't cover any residency requirements that we want, like being a member of the district for 30 days. There.
Again,
It doesn't say 30 days.
But again,
It doesn't
Mr.
say
Chair,
when.
we're going to vote on each of those things individually.
So
We're
I
going to
guess-
vote on the 30 days, we're going to vote on the year's requirement of U.S. citizenship, we're going to vote on all those serially.
Yeah,
As
I
Ms.
agree.
Coulterman said, we're not doing one up and down vote.
So do we want, I mean, is the sentiment that we want to vote on this language, or we just want to punt on this and just vote on, I mean, I think we need some language for the charter to be adopted. Yes. Member
I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think it would be a good idea to say, we put a motion out that we're going to accept this piece. Well, we don't have to vote yes or no on that right now. We seem to think maybe this piece will work. I would really like to discuss the pieces that are coming second that look to me like they're coming from the San Jose, where it said the year requirement and the 30 days requirement. And then down here it says the incumbent must at all times continue to be a citizen of the United States. I mean, good God, what did they commit, some kind of a crime and they're no longer a citizen? I certainly wouldn't want to put that in. So I think that we need to say, what is our intent? What the members of the committee need to express their intent for what they want, and then perhaps we say, well, as Mr. Cooley has suggested, we say maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. Then we look at that whole thing in entirety after a few minutes of discussion and say, all right, this looks okay, and we would like also for the council to consider maybe section 404 from San Jose D, if appointed to such an office, they must have been a registered elector of the city at the time of the appointment. I mean, that seems like maybe that was a loophole there that people were going from. But I myself, I don't like any of this language about you've got to be you've got to live here for a year before you can do that, because I've been to many swearing in ceremonies, and people want to vote. They want to get busy. They want to get involved. And most of the people who are sworn in have been here for a while, and so if they're running for office, they know what their heart is telling them. I don't know if they know what they're getting into, but they know what their heart is telling them.
I'd like to make a point about the year thing. I'm sorry. I was going to wait for you to finish anyway, but I would be very concerned about a year wait, because if you think about what we're doing here, we're trying to make sure that people of that everybody, including a lot of recent immigrants, are from protected classes, are from Asia, from Africa, from Latin America, and by prohibiting them from running for office for a year after they become citizens, you're acting at odds with federal voting rights and civil rights law. I think these provisions from the San Jose Charter must be very old, and I don't even know if they're really enforceable anymore. I would suggest that you don't even consider the year. That would make me very uncomfortable in trying to even present that. But if you want to consider the 30, why don't you just take a straw poll right now? Is anyone interested in anything from the San Jose Charter? And I don't even think you really need to consider the if you stop being a citizen kind of a concept. And I don't think, and this clearly says if you want to hold office, this is what you need to do. I'd like to remind the committee that this is the actual language of Charter Section 600. I made a few typo mistakes in terms of including what's there now, but this is actually what's in our charter. So if you want to add stuff to it, that's fine, but in terms of recommending anything, you're telling us how you want us to change our current charter language. So Section 600 is just, a red line of the charter section based upon what we heard you say.
I guess, City Attorney, I'm still unclear. Where in the charter, is it in this section that we determine the number of districts?
No, it's the next section.
The next section.
This is just
Don't
simply,
have a sample.
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
So
it's
scroll
the
down
next
to
page.
second page.
Okay.
And then redistricting is also in the second
yes,
page as well.
sorry,
So,
yeah.
and one of the things that, of course, it sounds like you guys are moving away from it to accept this thing as a whole. There's writing in here that says alternate sections, so clearly you don't want to accept it as a whole. I would highly recommend that you take each item that is of concern to the committee members one by one, break it down, and then discuss it, come to an agreement on each concept that you want to put forward, and then we can take the aggregate of all of the concepts that the committee has directed us, and then we'll do a rewrite. And that's what will be presented to the council.
So, point of order, there's a motion on the floor to accept Section 600 and only Section 600, as with the changes as suggested. So we shouldn't be discussing anything else other than that until we voted on Section 600.
Okay, so that was a motion by Member Coulterman and seconded by Ricosa?
Yes.
Okay, any more discussion? Yes. It's basically, we had suggested some word changes to Section 600. We're only voting on Section 600, whether to recommend that the concept here be modified and sent to the council.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
That's not what the motion says. The motion says we're going to adopt Section 600, which is the text of Section 600. If you want to adopt the idea of Section 600, that's a completely different thing. No, I'm serious here.
But
the
text is going to be modified based on what the attorney's going to do.
Then let's just say we want to do whatever it's saying and not say we're going to do what's up there. What's up there is not important, guys.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't you modify the motion to say you recommend that the charter be amended as illustrated by the changes in Section 600 plus the recommended language that you came up with. The recommended changes that you expressed, in other words, to include qualified registered elector and city clerk and mayor and police chief and city clerk. I mean, this is, after all, this is the existing charter language. I don't think we're not going to rewrite this entire section of the charter we're only going to make the changes that you're recommending we make to it. I mean, if you tell us any other changes you want to make to it, that's fine, but this is the actual language. The next section that you're going to see is new language that's not in the charter right now. So I would not recommend that you necessarily adopt that language, but at least recommend the changes as illustrated here and as recommended by you in this meeting.
Is that acceptable to you, Member Coulterman?
I thought that's exactly what I was trying to say.
That's what I thought you were saying.
Yes.
Okay,
Chair.
so that is the motion. Yes.
So keep in mind that as I understand the motion, and if maybe I'm misunderstanding it, and I'd love a clarification on the motion, because I think I'm as confused as Committee Member Cooley on this. The language that right now you guys are gonna take a motion on, it covers and asserts some of the concepts that were under discussion earlier. So so for example, where it says no person shall be eligible to hold, that means that for the duration of their tenure in the council, in that district, they must be a resident of that district. I did not hear a discussion today and a direction from the committee whether or not somebody who left their district willingly even would be eligible to continue to hold. I'm okay if that's what you guys want to do, but what I'm saying is if you're accepting Section 600 as is, it says that right now, but I didn't hear that discussion. So I don't know if you guys want to either change the motion.
I've said that many
or-
times.
so
That's what it
I'm
says.
reiterating it because I'm confused, and I just want to make sure that the committee knows what they're voting on.
I already said that was fine. People can't willingly move, but that I'm interested in looking at other language that allows people to stay in their district if their boundaries change. But that, as I said, we're just looking at Section 600 in this motion, and we can add other pieces to it later.
Yes, with other motions.
Okay, Member Benito.
Yeah, I hope we could just step back a little bit and look at Hossam and Committee Member Cooley's suggestion. I've done many corporate contracts where we want all this stuff rolled in. We write it all in our terms, give it to legal, they come back with it, and we approve it. I mean, and that's why you do it in more of a list form. And then you can go through the list and make sure everything's in there when you're proofreading it, and you're done. I think this going back and forth is going to take forever, and I think that we're going to get into wordsmithing, and I think that that's somebody else's responsibility. And I just think we're setting ourselves up for a long night and being frustrated just to no end. I would hope we can kind of take another peek at that.
Okay, Member Ricosa.
That's exactly the point. We're not setting ourselves up for a long night. We're relying on city staff again to do the wordsmithing and the legalese and all that. We're setting direction here. So I call for the question.
Okay, seeing no more discussion, all in favor of what the city attorney recommend that we do is we adopt this as a recommendation to council with the changes that have been discussed. In favor? Aye. Opposed? Are you abstaining, Member Almazan? Oh, you said yes. Okay. So 5-2 passes. All right, now we move on to Section 700. So does anyone have any, can we go to Section 700? Does any member have any suggestions for this section? Okay, I would like to call the question that we recommend that Section 700 be recommended to council.
You can't make a motion.
I can make a motion. I've done it before, and the city attorney backed me up.
Under Robert's Rules of Order, you can make a motion.
Yes.
Okay.
So I move this, seconded by Member Silva. Any discussion, Member Coulterman?
I'm just going to vote no because this is saying that we're going to have 3 districts, and I support 6 districts.
And I agree with that too. All right, let's call the question. Yes, Member Almazan.
Okay, so I understand that and I respect the vote. But if the if your sixth district, if you didn't get your wish, you could then recommend, or you're recommending nothing. If we don't have 6, we have nothing. That's what I'm hearing.